All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Potential Project where we find out what it takes to unlock your full potential in every area of life. Guys, today we have a special guest on today. We met through email, through the interwebs, which is pretty cool. He is a certified nutritional therapist with a focus in sports nutrition. He's the founder of a supplement company called Clovis, which we'll dive into, and has thousands upon thousands of health transformations with clients just like you guys. So, without further ado, Justin Nault, man, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me here, man. I appreciate it. And I love that intro. I want to dig into that of just the human potential in every area of life. That's like my number one focus. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I mean, it's interesting because you get into health and working out and things like that, and you realize the parallels between other areas of your life, and you're like, wow, okay, this makes sense. So if I can apply these strategies that I'm doing in the gym or with my food or with my business to other areas, everything starts to uptick, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I use the term how you do something is how you do everything.
Love that. Love that. I try to I try to live my life like that as well. Not always perfect, but you remind yourself of that, right?
Yeah, of course.
Cool. So, let's break down a little bit about how you got into the health field. Like, what brings you here today with all of these testimonials, with all of this work that you've done and the companies that you've built? Like, what got you into all this?
Yeah, I know our paths are a little bit similar because I know you came at this angle sort of through the fitness lens, right? Doing training and living in the gym and that kind of thing.
Yep.
And I was a chubby kid growing up. I went into high school almost 200 pounds. I was like 5'2" when I was 15 years old. I mean, I was a big boy. And when I was 15, I started lifting weights, and I had grown up watching Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone because I was born in '86. So I
Okay.
just like I was seeing the peak muscle fitness bodybuilding bodies you could imagine, some of the best of all time, and it just gave me pretty tremendous body dysmorphia that I
Hmm.
wasn't fully aware of until my 20s. So started lifting weights for like 2 hours a day when I was 15, and I was playing piano and singing, and I did some local talent shows and stuff, and decided that that was going to be my career. So I ended up going to school in Boston. I went to Berklee College of Music, and then I
Nice.
moved down to Nashville and became a songwriter.
Okay.
And I don't think, again, all the puzzle pieces click together, right? I'd always been obsessed with fitness and just obsessed with changing my body. And up to this point, it was mostly bodybuilding. And then when I got to Boston, I became a boxer. So not professionally, but I started boxing 6 days a week and training with some really
Wow.
heavy hitting trainers, a former champion, and all these things. And I was just constantly, I was up at 5 a.m. to lift weights, then going to class, and then riding a mountain bike from class to boxing in the evenings. And I just was obsessed with changing my body through fitness. I didn't understand much about nutrition. And then I was playing 300 shows a year in Nashville,
Wow.
and I landed a reality TV show. By the time I was 25, I had a TV show on ABC called The Big Time. And now my appearance was literally under a spotlight all of the time.
Yep.
So my body dysmorphia was just worse and worse, and the fitness got more and more extreme. I got into CrossFit, started CrossFit 2 a days. When I wanted to improve my Olympic lifting in CrossFit, I hired a former Olympian. And then I got involved with Strong First and Pavel Tsatsouline and kettlebells. And then I found jujitsu, and I trained for years, became a purple belt in jujitsu. I was just like always trying to change my body, but I always felt kind of chubby. And then I dialed the nutrition side of things. I discovered the paleo diet,
Okay.
and I started dropping body fat almost effortlessly. Like I found I could do half the time in the gym and just melt body fat. I was like, this is a cheat code. And that was when my mind started realizing that the things we put in our body are critically important. And the idea of like an ancestral diet is what I started studying. And my health was getting better and better. And right around that time, as I realized the power of nutrition, my niece was born terminally disabled.
Hmm.
So she was having over 300 seizures a day,
Oh my
and she
God.
went straight. Yeah, yeah, it was crazy, man. And I mean, within days of life, she was in the pediatric ICU, hooked up to all these crazy machines. They did over $1 million in testing on her, and they couldn't figure out what was wrong. And eventually, a few weeks in, they had to put a hole in her stomach and install something called the G tube.
Okay.
If a baby can't eat or drink, they have to feed her through a G tube. And this was my first introduction to the ketogenic diet. So the ketogenic diet, what everyone knows as keto, right? You see candy
Yeah.
bars stamped with keto in the store today, but the
All over the
ketogenic diet
place.
is Exactly. And I didn't know that in a medical setting, it's designed to suppress seizures in children, infants. There's a group called the Charlie Foundation, and this is all they do. They work with families whose children are epileptic to help keep the seizures at bay using the ketogenic diet. But so anyway, long story short, with Savannah, when it's a little baby, they have a baby formula that's a ketogenic baby formula called KetoCal. And this is where all the puzzle pieces click together for me because Gerber, which is a for-profit company owned by Nestle, by the way,
Yep.
uh, this baby formula is in every hospital in the country, subsidized by our tax dollars. And they put it in this baby's belly, and it's ketogenic, but in mainstream medicine, the quality is never considered. So it's a high fat, low carbohydrate formula. But I checked the ingredients because now I was into nutrition. I was learning about nutrition. And
Yeah.
it was all hydrogenated vegetable oil, soybean oil, artificial flavors and sweeteners, which is weird because it's not touching taste buds, it's going in a G tube. And then all the vitamins are like synthetic versions of vitamins. And I'm like, this is poison.
Yeah.
This is not okay. And I brought it to the attention of a world-class neurologist. And he looked at the ingredients list, looks me dead in the face, and he goes, huh, I never thought to check that.
Jeez. Because it fit the
Yeah,
void, right? It fit the void of the low carb, high protein
exactly.
macronutrients, right? Regardless of what was in the bottle.
100%. And as I went down these rabbit holes, because that was, a cliche term, but that's what I call my red pill moment. And I
Yeah.
was like, nobody is coming to save us. This is crazy. This is a high level, in a world famous hospital, a high level neurologist feeding poison to a baby. And don't get me wrong, I think he's probably a wonderful person and
Hmm.
was trying to help. He just didn't know what he didn't know, you know? So I had this weird experience with it, and I went home and I used a food dehydrator and food processors, and I actually made a paleo-friendly baby formula. We were able to put that in Savannah's G tube, and that actually became my first product. I added a bunch of protein to it, and I hired a company to help me make it shelf stable and
Wow.
everything. And we launched it to CrossFitters as a protein powder, as a nutrient dense paleo superfood protein powder. Like this is real food in a
Yeah.
powder, not
And
toxic sludge.
how did it work out for Savannah?
It was extremely helpful. So that's the follow-up question I always get is how is Savannah? So Savannah, unfortunately, did not turn out to be epileptic. Epileptic.
Okay.
She had something called KCNQ2, which was eventually diagnosed for her. Her life expectancy was less than 3 years. She was one of 96 living cases on the planet
Oh
of this
my God.
particular problem. Yeah, and so she far surpassed her 3 year life expectancy. She's 10 years old now.
Wow.
Unfortunately, she is still considered 100% disabled. So, she can't communicate or, she can't really lift her own head up even. There's a nurse that lives in their home
Mm.
50 hours a week, takes care of the child. And it was just a crazy experience, man. And it's my family, we're also used to it now. We've had Savannah's been a part of the family for 10 years, but I know it
Yeah.
can be jarring for listeners and everything to hear, such an extreme story of disability. But, the silver lining is I started sharing her story, man. And I started researching human metabolism and human biochemistry and biology. And since I now had a paleo supplement out on the market, I met Rob Wolf and Abel James and all these thought leaders that really like helped me understand. And Rob Wolf was a PhD biochemist,
Right.
and he was sending me textbooks of like, here, study the human body, learn how this goes, learn
Yeah.
how this works. And I just started sharing and revealing sort of the horrors of mainstream medicine. I mean, in the West, mainstream medicine is the third leading cause of death in America. And I started sharing that with people, and that turned into a podcast and a Facebook group.
Yep.
And that was about 8 years ago that I started all that, and now we're here with 650,000 followers and a 12,000 person Facebook group and thousands of transformation stories. So there's a bit of a silver lining, but that's how I got here.
That's amazing, man. And thank you for sharing that story. It's uh it's unique, but I'm sure people who are listening can relate in some way that has been effect in their family and their own personal lives. I wanted to touch on two things that you talked about. One was about yourself, right? When you were a kid, you said you were a heavier kid. Your obsession with fitness, was that running away from your body or was it running towards someone like Arnold Schwarzenegger?
I think it's a combination of both.
Mm,
Unfortunately, I had developed self-loathing for my body. And now, I mean, I have 10 plus years. I'm 38 years old now, right?
right.
I have 10 plus years of depth psychology under my belt and traveling around the world and working with shamans and coaches and therapists to understand some of these things that I didn't understand then. But the body dysmorphia was like a true self-loathing, you know.
Mm,
In my mind, the movie stars were shredded, right? So my worth, my value as a person was lower in my mind because I was chubby. And I think that's part of the reason that my work has ended up, my clients are, 85% women. Most of my following is women. Because in an interesting way, I relate to them in ways that others don't, because I had tremendous body dysmorphia. I was trying to change my body out of a hatred for my body. I was
mm,
trying to become an ideal body image that is very unattainable for most people. And I had a little bit of a dynamic shift where I was being looked at as a sex object as a man because of my career, where normally it is women. Women are hypersexualized in our
right.
society. But me as a musician, I mean, dude, I have stories for days. I had to have security on stage with me because I've had my shirt ripped off. I've had crazy things happen to me as a musician. So it's just like a lot of judgment around my body, judgment from the external, other people, and judgment from self. It was like a deep, deep problem with the way that I looked in my own mind.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you know what came to mind when you said that was the word undesirable, right? Like if you're looking
Yeah.
at these actors and actresses and you want to be um put on the stage, so to speak, as this type of person, right? I'm an artist, I'm a celebrity, I am whatever you fill the blank, and my body does not reflect that, well, then you're going to be undesirable from people. And I think that's a lot of what women go through. And we can we can touch on that a little bit down the road here. But another thing that you mentioned was that no one is coming to save us. This, I don't know if it's been these last couple weeks, but this has been coming up in my head a lot. You hear it from multiple people, but I've taken it a step further. Not only is no one coming to save us, I think a lot of times we're swimming upstream. And I know you have done tons of research on big pharma, the food companies, and I do want to talk about that a bit today about these industrialized countries like America that we live in and how we are swimming upstream and almost being brainwashed by mainstream media. And it's quite alarming at the effects that it's having to our health, right? Um,
Yeah.
so before we get into that, I want to go off of what you said, right? So let's pick up where we were at. You started the supplement company, and started taking on clients. Like, are you still doing all that? Like, how's that going with supplements, with clients, you name it?
Yeah, yeah. Beyond my wildest dreams, man. I mean, Clovis is still around. Clovis was the first company I ever created, and that powder still exists. It's called the Daily Superfood Powder at iamclovis.com. I have a second supplement company that I was brought in as a partner on as an influencer, if we use that term,
Yeah.
called MedChoice. That's my Amazon company. Another supplement company is doing extremely well, and then now I have a thriving coaching practice, and I work with women, mostly women, but men every day as well,
Yeah.
and we're completely healing people's metabolisms. And what we're doing, it speaks to what you said earlier, right? If we're looking at human optimization as a whole, the human body is designed to thrive. It's designed to be happy, healthy, energetic. And
Yep.
the only reason it isn't is because we keep throwing toxic stuff at it. So I try to help people remove all the toxins from their life. And we start with, if we look at it like a pyramid, right? The base of that pyramid is the foundation of poison in our food, in our water, in our personal care products, in the air in our homes, all of these things that are metabolic disruptors,
Hmm.
because, as you know, your metabolism, the whole of the metabolism is to take in food, substrate, and create energy, which in the
Yep.
body is called ATP. We need ATP for everything. For me to move my fingers while I talk to you, for me to speak to you, blink, breathe, I need ATP. So the energy is the most critical thing that we have as humans. And the metabolism is designed to create that energy. So if we poison and disrupt the metabolism, we will have low energy, which prevents us from going up the pyramid, which is, how's your cognitive function? Do you have the cognitive ability to work at a job you love, to have an energetic, playful, fun, romantic relationship, to have a community of people that you're excited to be around, to do the physical activities you want to do, to pick up your grandkids, to start a business, to play guitar, whatever it is? Everything
Yeah.
requires energy. And we have these epidemics now of depression and anxiety, and people just like, kind of stuck on the couch watching Netflix or whatever. And they're blaming themselves for that because they
Yes.
don't understand that their energy creation system just needs some help. We
Yes.
have to start with that foundation.
Yeah, I love everything that you just said right there, in the basis of how you approach working with clients in the fact that you never once said the word broken. None of us are broken. And a lot of those scenarios that you brought up with like playing with your kids and doing all those things is your body at normal, right? That's not even like what we think of as like, oh my God, this feels amazing, is kind of just like how your body's meant to feel. I think I like to use
Hmm.
like the pebble in the shoe analogy. We're all just walking around with a bunch of pebbles in our shoe, and we've called that normal. And then
Yeah.
someone like you comes along and just shows you, hey, this is how we get back to building our metabolism and allowing your body to just do what it wants to do. It's an amazing system of
Mm.
operations. Um, but yeah, I love that. Let's talk on that a little bit more. So, your foundation is rebuilding people's metabolism then?
Yeah, 100%. And it's the concept, I think we talked about this a little bit before we started recording, but it's the concept of food versus poison, right?
Mm.
So I break it down quite simply and quite logically for people where if you are dealing with chronic health issues, all of them, every chronic health issue you have is simply a result of your body not having had a long enough period of time without being poisoned. We've been poisoned since we were little babies. I mean, talked about it with my niece in the hospital, right? Baby
Yep.
formula is toxic, man.
Yep.
99.9% of baby formulas on the market are toxic. So from the time we're little babies, we're being poisoned. And then I come along, and it's like, the diet debates and the hatred and the toxicity we see in diet culture and fitness culture online. My diet is better than yours, vegan versus carnivore, keto versus paleo, whatever. On it goes. And we hear these things like, oh, it's all just calories in, calories out. And it's like, okay, I hear you, but calories in, calories out is making the assumption that we are talking about food. If we're talking about food, calories in, calories out holds a lot of weight in terms
Yeah.
of weight loss and muscle, right? Losing tissue, burning tissue, metabolizing tissue, catabolism, let's call it, or anabolism, building tissue. Calories in, calories out is a model that could work really well if we were eating food.
Yeah.
75% of Americans' diet is ultra processed and it is full of toxins, pesticides, heavy metals, seed oils, artificial dyes, flavorings, sweeteners, all the things that were in Savannah's baby formula,
Yep.
right? So the calories in, calories out equation doesn't go completely out the window, but it takes a huge hit because, this is a true kava drink that I have here. This
Hmm.
can has a caloric content. There's an energy potential within this aluminum. I could
Yep.
eat this aluminum and I would technically be taking in calories,
Yeah.
potential energy.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean I'm going to turn that aluminum into energy. If I eat aluminum one day and then the next day I eat a ribeye steak, my body is going to respond very differently to the
Yeah.
aluminum than the ribeye steak. And some people think that this sounds extreme, but it isn't because we know now, right? Red dye is potentially going to be banned by the FDA in the
Yeah.
US right
As it
now because
should.
it's a known toxin. But it's
As it
also like if
should.
you look at nutrition facts, absolutely. If you look at nutrition facts that in a food that has red dye in it, some of those calories are from red dye 40, right? It's like
Hmm.
so not we can't just play the calories game over and over. If we simplify it to food versus poison, most, if not all of the complexity around human diet evaporates.
Yeah. And I love that it's got to be simple because there's a million and a half different things that you could go out there and hear and go on Instagram and like you said, try this diet, listen to this guy. Um, and I want to expand on this just one more step, right? Food versus poison. And Justin clearly laid out that most of the stuff you are consuming is not even considered real food. But let's take into account of all of the other invisible toxins and poison that you're open to in your daily life, the water you're drinking, the air you're breathing, the chemicals that were on the clothes that you wash them in, the lotions that you rub on your body. Like that's just creating a whole bunch of other poison on top of the stuff that you're eating. It's just that we only think about it because food is tangible and we can see it and we have to eat it every single day. But I mean, talk about that, right? How many effects on the body are those invisible things having?
Yeah, a ton, a ton. And this is a concept that I teach people called poison-free living. And this is again where part of the reason why I think I work with so many women is women are hypersexualized their whole lives. They're judged on their body image, and they're always told that they need more, right? If
Hmm.
you're having skin issues, You need more lotion. You need more face wash. You need more hyaluronic acid. You need more, right? You need a different kind of shampoo, a different kind of conditioner, a different kind of foundation, a different kind of eyeliner. It goes on and on and on.
Yep.
And they're taught that they need more. And all of those things are metabolic toxins. And I use this example of absorption, right? Your skin is the biggest organ on your body. If I go to the doctor with low T, testosterone, they
Hmm.
can give me a cream and I can rub that cream on my skin and the blood levels of free testosterone go up. So clearly, we are absorbing things through the skin. And what most women are dealing with is that almost all the personal care products in their home are estrogen mimicking compounds. A few words for this. Some people use the term xenoestrogens. One of my dear friends, Dr. Anthony J., PhD biochemist, he's the author of a book called Estrogeneration. He calls them estrogenics.
Okay.
And this is in birth control, it's in sunscreen, it's in face wash, it's in marijuana, it's in flax seeds, right? So your underwear, like all these plastics that are like we know from clinical studies that polyester underwear can make men infertile, 100% infertile by having polyester on their testicles, right?
Yeah.
So we have this situation where there is so much poison, but the answer from the mainstream is always more of something. If you have a problem, you need more pharmaceutical drugs. If
Yep.
your skin's not cooperating, you need more crazy creams and lotions. If your hair is thinning or falling out because you have no energy because your metabolism isn't working properly, you need this hair thickening shampoo and conditioner that's also full of toxins. It's a crazy cycle, man.
Yep.
And
Yep.
it's I don't think people are fully aware of it.
Well, I think I think just to not go down too far in the rabbit hole, but to explain to people what Justin was talking about was when your body is absorbing these, call them fake hormones. Think of it like a puzzle piece, right? Where your body needs estrogen, it needs testosterone, it needs progesterone, and these fake estrogens come in and they fit the puzzle piece. But what's missing is the downstream effects of what that produces. For example, progesterone produces other hormones. But when you're fitting the puzzle piece with a fake piece of progesterone, that downstream effect does not happen. And then that leads us into a bunch of problems. I hope that makes sense. I like to bring things to analogies to let you guys know that, hey, our hormones are out of balance, not just because of the way our cycle is for or if we're in menopause, it's that we're affecting these things with these tangible items that we're consuming throughout our days.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the puzzle piece analogy. Another way I describe it to people is let's say, Sean is sending me a text message, and that text message is a hormone, and my phone is a hormone receptor. Well, if I have these fake estrogens, these xenoestrogens or whatever coming in, it's like my phone is in airplane mode and it
Mhm.
cannot receive that text. The signal is being sent to it, but the phone cannot pick it up. So your cells, the receptors in your cells, are literally sort of gunked up by these estrogen mimicking compounds. And then the cell can't receive the signal it's supposed to, which again throws a wrench in everything. If we look at human metabolism, from this is a little bit nerdy, but from glycolysis or beta oxidation through the citric acid cycle into the electron transport chain, there are all of these tiny, tiny little super sensitive steps that can be disrupted. And all
Yeah.
these metabolic toxins are disrupting those steps and therefore disrupting energy production.
No, I love the science stuff, and I mean, hopefully, some of our listeners do as well. Because what I've found is the more you go into researching these things and gain some clarity for yourself, it allows you to make sense of it and make the changes in your life. Right? I don't
Yes.
totally buy into the fact that knowledge is power, but I like to use the term knowledge is empowerment. Because if you were to sit
Mm,
here and give me a 2 hour lecture on how food metabolizes in our body and it causes blood sugar spikes, and you make that make sense for me, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to go throw out the added sugar in my house. You know what I mean? But if it doesn't
yeah.
make sense and you're just being pushed an agenda through social media and these commercials, well, then you're going to think that milk builds strong bones now, aren't you? So it's it gets kind of
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a giant marketing funnel. It's like you're constantly being sold things, right? It's the same thing with pharmaceutical companies. If we all know somebody who's been involved in a multi-level marketing scheme of like Herbalife or something like that, right? So you have a company that spends a lot of money creating science that
Mhm.
says their products are the best.
Hmm.
and then recruits a bunch of people to go out and sell those products. Now in Herbalife, we see it. We're like, oh yeah, they're making up some stories over here. They're using these people to sell their products to other unsuspecting people. The pharmaceutical company and industry is the same thing.
Mm.
They're training doctors, they're training MDs, they're training PhDs, they're training these people with these high level credentials because of perceived authority, and they send these authorities out into the world who, because they have a white lab coat on, you think they know better than you do, and they tell you what you need to take. But I'm telling you right now, anyone who's listening to this who has ever had a health issue, that health issue was not because you were deficient in pharmaceutical drugs.
Yep.
That's not real.
Yep, I always tell people that like if they go get their labs done and they're low on testosterone or whatever it is or cholesterol and they get prescribed something, well you just have to ask, am I deficient in in this medication? And the answer is no.
Right.
You're not
Yeah.
deficient in that. And that's not
No.
knocking doctors or anything like that. Some of them are like very genuine, great people. It's just like you said, from the top down, that narrative is pushed. To fall into a system, essentially. I mean, we kind of touched on that in the pharmaceuticals a little bit, but before we go on to the next point, touch on the food companies a bit more, right? This blows
Mm.
my mind because I saw a story that was talking about the tobacco industry and how they got regulated, right? On their
Mhm.
messaging towards children and everything. So what they did was they took their scientists and the food companies took those scientists and then had them craft the food to become,
Mhm.
you know, addictive about
Mhm.
their bliss point. That's a term that I know and have people that can market to kids now. It's no longer just about regulation there. So talk more about like the food industry a bit.
Yeah, I mean it goes so far back and it's in everything, right? It's like now that RFK is involved in politics and everything, people may be familiar with seed oils, right? Like seed oils came to be in the same way, where there was a company that took this industrial waste product that was cottonseed oil, and they paid the American Heart Association $1 million to create science that said seed oils are good and saturated fat from animals is bad, right? That $1 million in today's money is about $21 million. The
Oh
American
my
Heart
God.
Association was an obscure company. They were failing. They had no research funds at all. And, Big Food came along and fixed that. And then the story that you're talking about is Philip Morris, the cigarette companies. And when they got slapped with this regulation where they said, we now need to tell everyone that cigarettes cause cancer, well, Philip Morris said that's really bad for business. So they bought over 80% of the food companies. Over 80% of the food companies, they bought them up. They created this industry and these positions that you're talking about, which is food engineers. So
Mm-hmm.
these food engineers are scientists that are salaried at over six figures a year, and their job is to make the food, as the term is, hyper palatable, to make it
Ah,
as hyper palatable as possible. And this is where you get food slogans like, Pringles, bet you can't eat just one, or like once you pop, you can't stop, or whatever, right? This binge eating. And dude, the number of people that come to me that are like so upset with themselves because they think they have a binge eating problem, and I'm like, no, no, that's design. That's by design. That's
yeah.
not your fault. They're hijacking your hypothalamus to make sure that you eat more because these food engineers created it to be that way. And that's where you go down the rabbit hole of, like you said, once the cigarette companies owned the food companies, well, then it became Tony the Tiger
Yep.
and the Trix
Yep.
Rabbit and the
Yep.
Fruit Loops, Toucan Sam, and everyone's your best friend, and the Rice Krispie elves and all this stuff, right? It just became this hyper focused marketing towards children.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is because if you can get these hyper processed, hyper palatable, ultra processed foods in the bodies of children, those children will get sicker sooner. They will
Mm-hmm.
need medical care sooner. And then they end up, their lifetime value as a customer of mainstream medicine becomes hundreds of thousands of dollars over their lifetime.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, if you guys go to the grocery store, there in the cheese aisle are Kraft singles, which can't even be considered cheese because they're not cheese. Like, if that is not a red flag, I don't know what is. You have to
Yeah.
individually open them, and they're not even considered cheese. And you want to consume that? You want to give that to your children? That's just, come on, like this is where we need to get back to basics, I feel like.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, the thing is, it's really horrible what has happened, because over the last 70, I mean, really ultra processed food started flooding shelves around the 1950s. Like my dad always tells me, he remembers when Mapo came out and Crisco and all this stuff. And I mean, we are so spoiled, you and I. Like, I'm 38 years old. I remember when the internet came into my home with dial-up AOL and everything.
Yep.
And now I think about the last 10 years of my life has been Audible books and podcasts and all these books that you see behind me. And I have a Kindle Paperwhite with 1,000 books on it. It's like my access to information is staggering. But the moms and dads in the 1980s and the 1990s, it was a sign of affluence to have these brand name foods, right? It's
Mm,
like there's like Frosted Flakes, and then at the end of the aisle, there's like a knockoff Frosted Flake that's like $1 that just comes in a plastic bag, and you're like, oh, that's the cheap one. I want to be the affluent person who can have the Frosted Flakes. They really, really pulled the wool over people's eyes, and the people that are today that are making grilled cheese with Kraft singles for their kids, they don't know that that cheese is not cheese, that it's plastic. They don't know they're
right.
feeding their kid microplastics. So it's very challenging because people have 40-hour work weeks and multiple kids and spouses, and it's like, how are they supposed to sit around and learn the things that we've learned, you know?
Yeah. It's very true. And with that being said, like when you take on clients or when you just talk to people who have questions, like what are some of the things that you try to get through to them to start making some changes? Like if you were to take someone on and they are the mom with three kids and they're just loaded with cereals and everything's backwards in your mind, but to them it's just normal. Like what do you start to have conversations with them about?
Yeah, I mean, first things first is always getting a really clear picture of what their health looks like. And obviously, by the time they get to me, they usually have a lot of complaints about their health. Some of these women have been obese or overweight for 30 plus years, you know?
Mhm.
So we start there, and then we move into personal development first and self-love first, right? And I ask them, if you're a mom, you have kids, a spouse, whatever, when was the last time you felt like you put your needs first? And that one question, more often than not, can lead a woman to burst into tears on a call
Mhm.
with me the first time she meets me. She's like, well, I never put myself first. It's always about my kids, it's always about that. I'm like, listen, I understand. And then I help them see, your children are going to do a terrible job doing what you tell them to, and they're going to do an amazing job becoming you.
Mm.
So you're sending signals to your children that your feelings, your needs, your desires, your emotions do not matter. You need to shut them down and everybody else comes first. Where, from a place of self love, you can give an example, you can set an example for your children of like, well, mom has to take care of mom. This is in the airplane, right? Put your oxygen mask on first. So a lot of these moms are just there in survival mode because it's, PTA meetings or driving kids to sports and they're working a job and they're trying to cook dinner and this, that, the other thing, right? So they feel so frazzled that honestly, man, it sounds interesting to people, but the first thing I have these women do is stand in a mirror, look themselves in the eyes, and say, I love you 10 times like they mean it.
Wow.
And a lot of them are like, I thought this was a weight loss program. I'm like, oh no, we're going to help you lose weight, but we have to shift mindset first. And the reason why I say that is like you brought up the cheese and you're like, why would you want to feed that to your kids, right? Well, if anybody knows it's poison, then they don't want to feed it to their kids. So
Right.
first, if we can show them that ultra processed foods have these metabolic toxins that aren't good for them, then the story shifts, right? Because if somebody comes to me and they're drinking 10 Pepsis a day and I say, hey, listen, I think we should pull back on the Pepsi. Maybe let's go down to 5 a day or 3 a day and eventually none a day, right? The story becomes this, oh God, here's another nutritional therapist, another guy telling me that I can't have my favorite thing and this sucks and getting healthy sucks. It's a belief that getting healthy sucks. If I
Hmm.
can shift their mindset, it then becomes, well, if he's right and that is poison and I love myself, then why would I put poison in my body? And
Love that.
that's the shift we need to make. If you love yourself, it becomes harder and harder to poison yourself. It becomes harder and harder to choose a sedentary lifestyle that's bad for your bones and your joints and your muscles. It becomes harder and harder to watch murder mysteries till 2 o'clock in the morning and then take an Ambien because you can't sleep, right? All of these self destructive patterns start to fall away when we work through the side door of self love.
Yeah. I mean, I absolutely love that. Because most people were probably expecting you to say, well, we're going to break down what they eat in a day, and then we're going to start doing some macros and
Yeah,
X, Y, and Z.
for
But
sure.
I guess my question is, if someone isn't working with someone like you or I, and doesn't have the coach, and like you said, look at all those books behind you. We are flooded with knowledge. It's all out there. What's the
Mhm.
biggest thing holding people back from
It's
making
the,
that shift?
Yeah, for me, I don't think most people have ever done real personal development work, right? To
Okay.
understand what are their blind spots, what have they been choosing, right? Because the most common thing that I hear from everyone is I've tried everything, nothing works. And the word that you used earlier is they come to me and they're like, I am broken.
Mm.
And I'm like, okay. And I lead with empathy. I hear you. I understand. This sounds terrible. You probably been gaslit by doctors. You probably had personal trainers tell you you don't know how to track your calories. And it's always you, your fault, your fault, your fault, you know? And I just try to give them a different lens to look through because once they see food versus poison, and I teach them that food is only ever good for you in any amount, and poison is only ever bad for you in any amount. What ends up happening is I feed these women more than they have ever eaten, and the body fat starts to drop off.
Hmm.
So that's the thing is that we have to watch these false beliefs of like the idea of I've tried everything. What that actually translates to in 9 out of 10 clients is I have starved myself in a whole bunch of different ways.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and every time I starve myself, it whips back and I lose a little bit of weight and then I lose it all back. And I have a video. And if anybody wants this, just go to Justin Nault Official on Instagram, DM me, and just say, I want to see the weight loss roller coaster video. And I'll send it to you for free. It's a 10-minute video. And I put a graph up and I walk people through the up, down, gain weight, gain weight.
Mm.
But it's like Bitcoin. If you look at it over time, it's only going up, right? You're going up, down. But when you were 18, you were, 165 pounds, and now you're 50 and you're 215 pounds. And you've had a lot of up, down all along the way. But why is it that on average, it's just up, 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 up? And mainstream medicine, their answer is, well, that's just normal aging. This is
Yep.
just what happens. Your metabolism slows. And when you get in, like, okay, go back to the 1939 Yearbook of Agriculture, tracked people living in New York City.
Hmm.
Obesity was non existent. And the average 155-pound man was eating 4,200 calories a day.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I want to touch on this a little bit because it's important that people do understand slightly. So when Justin's talking about your up down over time, if you are consuming poison, back to what we talked about before, you are messing up your metabolism, right? In simple terms, you are messing with your body's natural functions to go ahead and burn fat. So if you're doing that for 5, 10, 30 years, your body is no longer able to fight off the poison as good, to lower your stress levels as good, to burn fat as good, and you have jacked up your system, therefore putting on more weight. But what he's talked about with, I liked how you were just talking about, you gave these women more food and
Mhm.
just limited or eliminated the poison and they were losing weight. Well, why is that? Because if the poison is no longer affecting your system, it can do what it needs to do, which is process the nutrients from the food. So I
Mhm.
hope this hits home with everybody, guys. So touch on that a little bit more, Justin. So the biggest thing you talked about was the mindset of people not loving themselves enough, right? Like what does it take? What's the light bulb moment where someone actually does the personal development work to love themselves?
Well, it's kind of a chicken or egg scenario, right? Because what I'm talking about here, sometimes in bioenergetic sphere, it's called LEA, which is low energy availability.
Hmm.
So when the body has low energy availability, everything suffers, right? So we know in clinical studies that the average person, the average depressed or anxious subject in clinical settings is creating 20% less ATP than non-depressed and anxious subjects. So they have less energy availability. So it becomes this thing where I'm like, even getting them to stand in the mirror and say, I love you is harder if they have low energy.
Okay.
So this is something that I ask of all of my clients that come in. I have something called daily non-negotiables, and we can talk about the daily non-negotiables. I'm like, give me 7 days. If you can give me 7 days, that's it. That's all I need you to commit to. And we're not even going to track full macros. I'm going to give you a couple things to do each day for 7 days. And then we're going to hop on a call, and your mood's going to be different. If I compare those two voice recordings of us on a Zoom call, your energy is going to be different. The way you show up is different. The tone of your voice is different. The way your eyes look is different. You're a more vibrant person as the poison starts to go away, and that makes things a little bit easier. But there does have to be a commitment of like, I am here to take action. I'm tired of this. I always tell people, you decide what your rock bottom is, right?
Hmm.
We hear the term rock bottom usually in like alcoholics. It's like, oh, rock bottom is if you're living under a bridge with a needle in your arm. It's like, no, no, listen, like you put on 10 pounds that you didn't want to put on, that can be your rock bottom. But it's up to you to say, I've had it here, this is it, and now I'm going to move in this other direction.
Yeah.
So I just need a tiny little leap of faith. So, like you said, so you can feel what it's like to not have a pebble in your shoe, you know?
Yeah.
And once the pebble's out of the shoe, you're like, this is great. I never want to go back, you
Yep.
know?
Yep.
So that's really what I need. I do need some degree of a leap of faith in the very beginning, and then we do a weekly progress report. We're like, did you do the things you said you were going to do? Because when you come work with me, I'm asking you for a commitment, and you are making a commitment.
Hmm.
Justin, I'm going to trust you at least for a little bit, and I'm going to do these daily non-negotiables, and I'm going
Yep.
to see how I feel, and we're going to take it from there.
And like you said, I mean, most people that are coming to you are at a space where they have tried a bunch of diets and they're kind of fed up, right? You're
Yeah.
frustrated, you're angry, you do think somewhat of you're broken. So, I mean, if that's me, I'm willing to try really anything. So if you tell me these
Yeah.
things that are going to help build my self-esteem, and I love how you touched on what was the acronym for basically the energy that you have?
LEA, low energy availability.
Right. So that's like your vitality almost, right? Like if you are
Yes.
low vibrational frequencies, you're not going to be able to give much to the belief in yourself. But as you remove the poisons and the toxins, that goes up, which is going to have a compounding effect on, whether it's affirmations, whether it's drinking more water, whatever positive habits you're contributing into your lifestyle, right?
100%, man. And the low energy availability state is so critical to understand because you end up in a situation where you're just circling, you're spiraling and you're circling because if you, for instance, if you take somebody that's overweight, anyone listening to this, if you have been overweight or and obese is just a medical term for more than 30 pounds overweight, right? So if you've fallen into that category, I want you to tell me if the symptoms that you're experiencing feel like too much energy, which is what diet culture will tell you. They will say
Mhm.
you have an energy surplus, you have taken in too many calories. Or do the symptoms you're experiencing feel like low energy? Cold all the time. I'm tired all the time. My teeth are sensitive. My hair is falling out. I have no libido. I need 10 cups of coffee to get through the day. That doesn't sound like an energy surplus to me.
No.
And this is where we get into the confusing. People describe calories in, calories out as energy balance, energy in, energy out. But it isn't because if you take a car and you fill the car's gas tank full of gasoline, but the engine has no spark plugs, it's not going anywhere. There's
Right.
no energy to be had. No energy is being created. There's potential energy coming in, but without the spark plug, it's not going to be turned into actual energy. So we have to understand that low energy state. And there's actually, I'll keep this brief, but there's a story I want to share with you because I think it's going to be fascinating for you as a trainer, right?
Yeah.
There was a woman who came to me, and her story is very public. I've done podcasts with her. She's an amazing person. Her name is Jenny. And Jenny came to me having tried every diet under the sun. She was clinically obese. She had tried the banana diet where she ate nothing but bananas and literally ended up in the hospital with like dehydration and all these problems. And she was doing 90 minutes of intense workouts every day. She was doing the P90X workouts in her home. So she's doing 90 minutes of working out every day. She's eating like 1,100 calories, and Jenny was almost 6 feet tall. So she's like eating 1,100 calories, doing 90 minutes of working out, feeling terrible all the time. She comes to me, and I asked her for the leap of faith, and she's like, "Yes, I'm in." So we're like 3, 4 weeks in, and the scale's not budging. It's not moving. She's still feeling crappy. She's getting on calls in the same mood. And I'm like, "Are you doing what I'm telling you to do?" And she's like, "Yes, totally." So she's walking me through here's my food, here's what I ate, I'm choosing better foods, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, "Listen, you've been doing 90-minute workouts every day for six days a week for years now. And it sounds to me like you're still working out." And I had asked her when she first came
Hmm.
in, "Listen, we're going to take a month off. You're just going to go for walks outside. And that's it. You're going to eat well, you're going to sleep well, and you're just going to go for walks. And we're going to give up the high intensity right now because you're stuck in fight or flight." So on that call, she just kind of sheepishly looks at me and she's like, "Well, I'm following the food, but I haven't given up my workouts." I'm like, "All right, you're still working out." So I gave her an ultimatum. I said, "Listen, I'm only interested in working with people who are going to follow the advice that I give them." I was like, "You're perfect exactly as you are. You don't need to change for me. Don't worry. I'm not upset with you. But if we're going to continue working together going forward, you need to follow my advice." So she's like, "Okay." She makes a commitment to me. She stopped the intense workouts. She dropped 11 pounds in 7 days.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
I
the
mean,
power of inflammation, the power of stress. The exercise is an inflammatory thing that's very challenging on our bodies. And if we're not fueling ourselves properly or we're stuck in fight or flight and we've had chronically elevated stress hormones for years,
yep.
we have to take a break. She had to shift from fitness Jenny into healing Jenny.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like some people might not understand is like exercise is catabolic. It's breaking your body down
Yeah.
physically and sometimes mentally, right? And if your body is already in a state where it's hyper aware, it's in this heightened sense of awareness, with cortisol, with whatever, and you're just doing that over and over again, thinking, well, this is why. It's because some people think that exercise equals losing weight, right?
Mhm.
The whole conversation of eat less, work out more. I wish it was that simple, but if you're working out that much to try to fight against your body, it's gonna happen just like Justin's client, where the needle's not gonna move on the scale at all.
Yeah. Are you
Well,
familiar with the term sarcopenic obesity?
heard of it, but let's break it down.
It's important for listeners to understand because sarcopenic obesity is the direct result of what we're talking about here, the catabolism that is exercise, right? So if you're breaking down tissue, catabolism just means breaking down tissue, right? So what ends up happening is people kind of like the Biggest Loser show that was out, right? It's like we're going to feed you 900 calories a day and you're going to exercise for 10 hours a day and blah blah blah, right? Like this calories in, calories out model. It's like, yeah, you're going to have to create energy from your own tissue, but if you have poison coming in and disrupting the metabolism, it doesn't mean that that is going to pull tissue from body fat, which is called adipose tissue.
Mm.
So we now have this epidemic in America, really over just the last 20, 30 years, of people that have this new diagnosis called sarcopenic obesity, which is they're clinically obese. They have more than 30 pounds to lose. They have body fat all over the place and their bones are disintegrating. They have
Mm.
osteoporosis and they have low skeletal muscle mass. And when you talk to these people, they're like, well, I'm eating right, I'm dieting and exercising. I'm like, okay, your bones are crumbling, your muscle mass is disintegrating, and you're still storing body fat. That's hard for the average listener to understand because they don't understand the mechanisms of body fat storage. One of which is pulling toxins from your bloodstream and wrapping them in fat cells to get them out of the bloodstream. Body fat storage is your body protecting you. We look
Mhm.
at it like it's a bad thing. It's not. It's a safety mechanism. It's trying to protect you from what you're doing to yourself. So you can work out and eat a low calorie diet, and you can do it for years, and you may end up with sarcopenic obesity.
Wow. Well, I'm glad you clarified that because I did hear about it, but that brings it right to the surface and makes so much sense. And I hope that people are listening can draw the conclusions, right, of back to where we started with food versus poison. And Justin just narrated to you, the more poison you're putting in your body, it's your body doing what it needs to do to protect you against the poison, leading to all of this body fat, adipose tissue in regions that aren't, you know, helpful, right around our midsection. And that's the stuff that we're trying to get rid of. I want to touch on one last topic before we kind of wrap things up here, and
Yeah.
that was you posted about this, and it was the environment, right? You said your about your metabolism and your health just being an environment. Can you draw that bridge?
Yeah. The environment of the human body is critically important, right? So for me, everything that I'm doing, to break it down simply, is I'm trying to increase your metabolic rate. The easiest way to think about this is I'm increasing your internal core body temperature, right? So we all hear this, the body runs at 98.6, right? So if I have women that are overweight that come to me, I have them first thing in the morning take their body measure, their body temperature measurement.
Hmm.
Sometimes women are down 94, 95, low 96s. This is a very, very low. You have a slow or low metabolism. This is like a walking corpse, man. You know, this is why
Yeah.
they feel cold all the time. They have no libido and all, they don't have any excess energy, right? So we're trying to increase the metabolic rate. Why? Because if we can increase the metabolic rate and the body functions properly, we solve a whole bunch of problems that people are spending trillions of dollars on right now. People that are doing juice cleanses and parasite cleanses and pumping themselves full of probiotic because their digestion isn't working and they think that's the way to fix it. Again, it's the mainstream mentality just in alternative health and wellness. Oh, you have a problem? Take this probiotic. It will be solved. No, that doesn't solve the root cause. Nearly everything we're dealing with today, low testosterone, infertility, estrogen dominance, gut health problems, depression, anxiety, skin issues, parasites, all of it evaporates if we increase core body temperature and increase metabolic rate. So,
Hmm.
for example, for every 1 degree Fahrenheit that I can raise your core body temperature, there are specific viruses in your body, and the replication rate of those viruses drops by 200x
My
for
God.
1 degree raise because your immune system is now firing on all cylinders, right? So most of the, as long as we're not purposely poisoning ourselves, right? Like if I'm driving down the street and I have my windows open, I'm gonna breathe in some brake dust, and that's an environmental toxin that I should be able to handle if I'm not made of glass. I have a very strong immune system, so I don't get sick, these kinds of things. People are like, oh, I have chronic sinus issues. I have chronic bronchitis and I always get, sinus infection and blah, blah, blah. It's constantly an issue of low metabolic rate because the body is just, all of the body's resources are going to trying to defend itself against all these toxins and just trying to survive. It doesn't have the excess energy to like fight off intruders or anything like that, right? So
Yeah.
that's the metabolic environment that I'm talking about. We want to create a metabolic environment that is very unfriendly for things that we don't want in our bodies.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that. So, um, let's kind of wrap up with just a few things, right? Like we don't have to make a list or have a certain amount, but like if you were to meet somebody and they were like, Justin, I hear you. No more poison. I need food. Um, I want to know something about that, raising my core body temperature and creating that better environment. Like, what are some of the things that you're going to tell someone to do, that are free that they can start today?
Yeah. I mean, first and foremost, the easiest thing you can do is remove seed oils. That's like the biggest toxin that we can get out of the way. And if you guys want a list of like exactly which seed oils, you can just, again, DM me anything you want that you hear in this podcast, DM me on Instagram and I'll send it to you. But it's like canola oil, rapeseed oil, soybean oil, safflower oil, sunflower oil, all these kinds of things. Go around your house and look at ingredients lists. You're going to find it in everything. You're going to have to throw away 80% of your food, unfortunately, right? But so that's like the mini version. The bigger version is DM me and I'll send you my foods list. So I have a thermometabolic foods list that are hand selected foods that are extremely bioavailable, extremely high in nutrients that actually increase your metabolic rate. They make your metabolism function better and create more energy from the food you're eating. So that's step one, is removing poison in whatever way that you do that.
Yep.
Step two is sending signals of abundance to the body. So there's big crazes today like intermittent fasting and things like that. I take a reverse approach where I follow a 30-30 rule. So within 30 minutes of waking up, you're consuming 30 grams of protein, preferably from animal proteins. We can talk about protein powders and stuff if you really need to, or if you have digestive issues. But 30 grams of protein within 30 minutes of waking up for most women will be transformative, even if they do nothing else.
Yep.
So those are two of the things that I start with. The third being movement. After every meal, just set a timer on your phone and you can walk around your house. You can step outside, whatever you want to do, but set a timer on your phone for 5 minutes and just walk for 5 minutes. And when that timer goes off, turn around and come back home. You have a 10-minute walk after each meal will transform your life. You don't need a gym membership. You don't got to do bodybuilding, none of that stuff. And the other secret weapon is sunshine.
Mm.
Get sunshine on your skin. I'm telling you. I've been doing this for a long time and I've worked with thousands of people and I've been studying my own health since I was 15 years old, like I said. And in terms of people looking for magic pills, which is what everyone's always looking for, the closest thing to a magic pill I've ever found is sunlight.
How so?
So this goes to something called quantum biology, which is a relatively new field. I don't know if we'd call it a field of medicine or a field of research or something like that. But the way that the sun interacts with your eyeballs, we think of eyeballs as vision centers. They're actually clocks. They work like clocks in the
Mm.
body. Your eyeballs are part of your brain, right? So you have these photoreceptors in the eyeballs that react to sunlight, which is also why people wear blue blockers,
Hmm.
because these screens are emulating certain spectrums of light, these wavelengths of light, the blue lights that are coming in our eyes. If you watch TV at night, you sleep poorly because those lights mimic sunshine and it suppresses the melatonin production in the body. So if somebody has sleep issues, the fastest way for them to fix those sleep issues is to watch the sunrise with no sunglasses on every morning outside. Just get
Mm.
outside, watch the sunrise, you sleep like a baby that night. Do that for 3 days, and you'll be like, I have the best sleep that I've ever had in my life. And when you're sleeping is when all of your repair mechanisms turn on.
Right.
Lymphatic drainage in the brain. If you did work out, you're rebuilding tissue. Most of your testosterone for men is produced in the evening while you sleep, right? So
Yeah.
sunshine plays a huge role in this. It's circadian biology.
Yeah, and I want to add a little point to that, guys. Do it without sunglasses. Your eyes are what absorbs the vitamin D into your body as well. So not that you have to stare directly into the sun, but
Yep.
definitely don't want to have sunglasses on.
100%, dude. Yeah, I'm glad you said that.
Yeah. Yeah, so listen, guys, I mean, those three things alone cost $0. You can do them today, right now. And it might be hard to believe, but I'm sure Justin can speak on this and I can too from doing it myself. It will change your entire life. Like it seems like it's too simple or too easy to be true. It's not. This is the real cellular biology of the way your body wants to operate, back to ancient times, right? This is how we were made to operate. And it works. And what do you have to lose? You have nothing to lose to get out in the morning, get some sunlight, go for a stroll after your meals. At very least, walk around in your house. You don't have to go outside. Um, and just start to be more aware, right? Go through your house, like you said, look at the back of the labels before you put something in your shopping cart. And be inquisitive, ask people, reach out to either of us, right? We'll talk to you about certain things that shouldn't be on those labels. And you will start to see some changes in your life. So guys, I mean, not guys, we're Justin. Where can these guys reach out to you, find you, learn more about what you're doing?
Yeah, the easiest thing to do is I run basically everything through Instagram at this point. So just go to Instagram at Justin Nault official and just click the DM button. It will be me. You will be talking directly to me. I'll answer any questions you have. I'll send you free resources. And I'll just wrap by saying this is really for people who are sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I promise you, the life of your dreams, when Sean says your entire life will change, he means it because the life of your dreams is waiting for you on the other side of more energy.
Hmm.
We need to help you create more energy. The things that I do in the world, working with clients, recording podcasts, I own 3 companies. I've been to 20 countries in the last several years, right? The things that I do, I could not do in a low energy state. I wouldn't be able to get out of bed. So if you're watching everyone else's lives on social media, you're like, why does it feel like some people are just have these magical lives doing these things? It's like you can do anything you want to do on the other side of having the energy to do them. So let me or Sean or whoever you want to get in touch with help you create more energy so you can live the life that you were meant to live.
Love that. I love it, guys. Well, that'll conclude another episode. I'm going to put this stuff in the show notes so that you can just click, get right to Justin's page, and get in contact with him. And the best part is like you said, it's him, right? It's not a team of VAs right now. It's just you're going to talk to a real person who has given real results and is a real awesome guy. So I thank you so much for sharing your time and your knowledge with us here. So until next time, guys, go crush it and be great.